Hello and welcome to the 104th episode of Growing Up Geek, the weekly podcast for geek entertainment and nostalgia. My name is Brad, and I'm joined by my brother Rob.
Hey-o.
Hey-o.
Harpe New Year.
Happy New Year to you. How's it hanging?
It's hanging good.
No, I asked a girl at work today, unfortunately, how's it hanging?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I don't know how to answer that. So be aware, it doesn't always work the way you think it will.
Yeah, it's one of those questions. Maybe not quite applies to women.
Yeah, I was just sort of like, oh, sorry. And then just shriveled away.
I gotta figure that's like she has to be like a feminist or something to really like be prepared with that response to how's it hanging. You know, fine, that's the answer. Like, you're not actually asking her that question.
Yeah. So, not to cut you off there with my weird story, but how was your New Year?
My New Year was great. I mean, it was quaint.
Yeah.
Hung out with my girlfriend and watched the ball drop on whatever channel we could.
Right.
Unfortunately, could not catch Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year.
Oh, okay.
That's ABC, and we don't get that. But
Gosh, remember when I had Voom HD?
Like yeah,
I do.
Other
I
HD.
Do. Yeah. Okay, so Voom showed their own. Do you remember their own New Year's coverage?
I do, because we were watching it together.
Yeah, and like when the ball dropped, they were like shooting the wrong thing.
Right. They were like filming the people who pushed the button to make the ball drop.
And Voom is no longer around. But yeah, so you had a quaint one. That's cool.
Yep. I mean, I did stare into infinity.
Oh, wow.
For a while.
How's that working for you?
It's working great. Just to explain, I've actually found out about this thing, the Mandelbrot set, which if you're from the 80s, you know what this is.
Okay.
So I'm late in the game, but it's interesting. It's a fractal that has infinite complexity, so no matter how far you zoom in on it, it'll still continue to yield stuff. So that's what I meant.
Yeah.
I discovered that, and I also discovered that Jonathan Colton has a song about it.
Oh, well, no way.
So I was so excited when I heard that song, and he's just like, Z1 is Z6 squared plus C, and I'm like, I know what you mean.
It's always nice when you get the references.
Right, and my girlfriend's just rolling her eyes at me.
Hey, you can't succeed without an eye roll.
Exactly.
At some point. We also had a quaint one, although a hilarious/painful thing happened right before our company arrived on New Year's Eve. I totally threw my back out in the stupidest way by like bending over right before they're like, ding dong, hello. Right. And so I was literally like laid out on the couch, and I just asked that they would move all the dips next to me because we had a whole...
Okay, welcome to the future for you, too.
Exactly. But yeah, our New Year's was great. Dips, if you couldn't dip it into something, we didn't have it, basically.
I see.
That was our strategy this year. I wanted to get pizza, and Amber's like, well, can that be dipped? And I was like, no. She's like, well, then it will not be there. And everything was much better off dippable, so tradition confirmed.
All right.
So 2010 is now the future, but why don't we look back at 2009 and video games in general? This is, I have to say, my favorite show almost of the entire year. When Rob and I do all these, I get so excited, not just about this, but about watching other people do their game of the year.
Right.
You know? It's the best. I think it's the moment at which geeks turn into, especially gamers, turn into like football fans. You know, where you get down to the end and it's like, this can't win, but it's going to, but it can't.
Right.
You know, you've got to pull it together. I can't allow this game. You know, watching people deliberate on that is so fun.
Yeah, I like how Giant Bomb does it because they literally record their deliberations.
Yeah.
Most people just kind of like give you the results.
Sure. But that deliberation makes it so exciting, and it gives it a sense of almost false importance. I mean, this is video games we're talking about, but I still love it, and I love the false importance of, like, you know, there can only be one, and you and I do not discuss this ahead of time. We don't know what they are, but we're going to go with the same formula we have for the past couple years, which is first we're going to do our runners-up.
Okay.
So what is the runner-up game of 2009 for you?
My runner-up game for 2009.
Team 1 has 1 point and gets 1 point. I always wanted to say Team 1 has 1 point and gets no points. And then people be, hey. Oh, by the way, sorry, I hate sidetracking it again, but Mom was over the break playing catchphrase and dropped like the dirtiest clue ever, which, if you know our mom, is not in her nature.
Right.
But the word was below the belt. And her clue, she goes, "It's dirty rotten from the waist down." And just the entire room was like unable to continue the round. I mean, that's what catchphrase is great for. By the way, king of games catchphrase.
Oh, yeah?
But yeah, Dad is like, I die and I come back as this, a ghost. Good. And Mom's like, "I'm Jewish and my pickles are." And then we just couldn't stop referencing this whole thing. It's like, kosher? And then Bryn was like, "His pickle was not kosher. He was dirty rotten from the waist down." It's just like all these really messed up things.
You really need to like put a recorder in the middle of the room while people are playing that and just like build up a sound archive of various things.
Oh, the clues are always so. One time, I won't give away the friends who said this, but the guy said to the girl, "Your farts smell like this."
Wow.
And she got it. Yeah, that's how they got it. It was like, oh no.
If you're gonna have a couple, like couples play it, you have to have teams of couples because it's always unfair when you have the one couple who's like, they just look at each other and they're like, "Jehovah's Witness."
Yeah, and I recommend guys versus girls because I just think it's so fun.
That's smart.
In any case, so yeah, we're talking about deliberations, all those things.
Let's get into this. All right, 2009.
Yes.
Game of the year, runner-up. For me, was Uncharted 2 Among Thieves.
Sweet.
Indeed.
Controversial because that game has swept so many awards lists as the winner, and you did get to play it, which is so nice, and I envy you.
I know, and I recommend playing it. It's definitely a must-have if you own a PS3, and I can fully get behind the reasons why this game deserves other lists number one, because it's definitely as polished as any game can be. I almost believe that whenever there's innovation in a game, which people, the naysayers say there's no innovation really in Uncharted 2, it's Tomb Raider with a guy. But I really think that, people who played like Tomb Raider and people who play other games that are very innovative will always kind of give a little bit of leeway as far as polish is concerned. They'll always say, well, I can kind of let some things slide because this one innovative feature is so cool, right? Uncharted 2, Naughty Dog's development staff must have been like hooked up to some sort of brain sharing device, because everything works so synergistically.
Oh wow!
I believe they even had like Nolan North, the voice of
Nathan Drake, the
year.
The man is great.
In a room, and somebody said, "Wouldn't it be great if the first words Gordon Freeman spoke in episode 3 were voiced by Nolan North?"
No, they gotta find someone new.
Complete the circle. But anyways, they said they actually would have him like watch footage of the game and react to it. So that that voice is just so natural for what's going on in the game. And to have the sound design backing the AI, backing the animation, backing the visual fidelity of this game, which has like no breaks, and the train level, which just, you're like, holy crap, they rendered an entire country somehow. But it's all in the background. Like, it's not necessarily the game. But I think that amount of polish makes this game very presentable to anybody, as a game.
Right.
You don't have to kind of wince or say, all right, hand me the controls. This is kind of this dumb thing. All right, go back. It's so well presented and so well done that a lot of people say this is one of the few games that you can pop in and just have other people enjoy to watch you play.
Yeah.
I went and played episode 2. It's on my list of unbeaten games that I'm trying to beat. And I was surprised by how kind of crappy the antlion animation is.
Oh.
Like, I can remember these things being so awesome, and this game being so awesome, and we talk it up so much.
Right.
But really just, like, this thing is just jumping around, like, dumbly. And just, like, shooting at me, like, regardless of whatever corner I'm hiding behind and things like that. And I'm like, wow, this really is kind of like low-level AI. And then you pop in Uncharted 2, and all the enemy guys are thinking like humans. They're acting like... And it gets to this point where it's so real that it actually isn't noticeable. Which is why I think a lot of people are kind of like, well, it didn't pop out at me. It didn't do anything. It's like, yeah, but it was doing everything that you expect a game to do and expect like an adventure to be without friction.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what's been happening to you and I both lately is now when we play games, a lot of time we see them through the lens of the developer. Like, oh my God, they're doing new things. And I think that's sort of a tainting that happens with people that listen to music a lot or even watch movies a lot. I mean, I have to admit, like, you start to develop a sense of the creators of the music or the creators of the movies, and you start to refine your taste and enjoy what this guy's doing and not what this guy's doing, and you follow certain trends. But it sounds like Naughty Dog, who I always loved because of Crash Bandicoot, and I'm still shed a tear that there's no new Crash Bandicoot. But if this is what Crash Bandicoot has become, and I mean, obviously that's stretching it, but
pretty much,
then they have my blessing, and I really want to see more of this game. I really want to experience it because, sadly, I'm still a one-console dude, and you'll see that reflected in my list, of course. I don't have Wii or PS3, but yeah, it just sounds like this is just superbly executed where you can sit back and go, man, it really does change things to have a really good developer,
Yeah, solid.
Solid as a rock.
All right, Brad, so your runner-up.
My runner-up is going to be Batman Arkham Asylum.
Oh.
Again, my list is affected by the fact that I only have an Xbox 360. So my runner-up is actually not the most amazing game to me. And that's, going against the grain a little bit because a lot of people, said Arkham Asylum was one of the best games of the year. But I had faults with Arkham Asylum. It normally, in another year, wouldn't have made my list. But this year wasn't the strongest 360 year. It was certainly a strong year for the PS3. When it comes to exclusive titles, I mean, we've said it a million times on the show, this was definitely the year to buy a PS3, and I've been happy to see that some of the people who listen to the show have actually gone out and done that. But the 360, it didn't have the most amazing games this year.
No.
And Arkham Asylum, to me, is really well done. And if I could talk for just a second about it, I think it's a really big geek success. Because, despite you and I being excited about it, as soon as we saw it, and I think a lot of that was influenced by graphics and the animated series cast,
Right.
Despite us being excited about it, there was a lot of reasons to doubt this game would be good. When you look back at licensed games, when you look at comic book games, it has a lot of things going against it. And some people have pointed out, the way that they revamped the characters to make them darker, it could go south so easily. And yet it ends up being a game that people who don't give a crap about Batman still consider one of the best games of the year. And I think that that's a big achievement, especially for Batman fans. I mean, you've got Dark Knight now. I've actually heard that the comics are doing really nice things. There's a bunch of different titles related to Batman in the comics, but most of them are good right now. So it's a good time to be a Batman fan. And this game really dives into the detective side, which is so cool. So yeah, Batman Arkham Asylum. Like I said, it has its faults. I actually quit playing the game right before the ending because of a particular room that I had to fight off a ton of dudes, and I just got tired of it. But the combat is really good in this game. I mean, it's very Prince of Persia-like to me, which I say is a good thing. A lot of people didn't like that, but it's rhythmic. You hit this, then you hit that, then you hit this, and it's like you hit them in the right timing to cause all this damage, and you just sort of watch it execute, and it's amazing. Anyway, if you haven't played this game, you do need to play this game. It's really good.
Sweet.
So now it's time to reveal what is apparently better than Uncharted 2.
I know.
To shake your fist at the gods of game journalism.
Indeed, I do. People are probably going to flip a lid a little bit, but I have to represent.
Yes, you do. And it sounds like you're still deciding like at the last minute. It's funny, like I hear clicking, it sounds, and I'm like, is he still deciding?
No. That clicking is just more of me staring into infinity.
Oh, beautiful. Well, the Mandelbrot informs all of our decisions now.
Exactly, and I'm looking at which appendage of the Mandelbrot mass is going to tell me which game is 2009's Game of the Year.
I'm ready.
My 2009 Game of the Year is Flower.
Oh my God, once again, you've done it. You have done it to me twice. Because I swore to God that last year you would pick Fallout 3, and you picked Rock Band 2.
Right.
And this year, because of that, I'm like, well, dub, it's got to be Beatles Rock Band, and it's going to bore the crap out of our audience. because we constantly talk about Rock Band on this show and how great it is.
Okay, Beatles Rock Band was a sweet game, but honestly, I didn't play it that much. I think I agree with you, which was that it wasn't that exhaustive of a game. In the end, you play it, you enjoy it, but you don't really get that much out of it. And I think there was something to be said about its inability to export those songs into Rock Band 2.
Right.
Because I would still play Rock Band 2, to this day.
Sure.
Every once in a while, I eye the album releases, but I don't think I might get around to that.
Right. But Flower, so a double PS3 year.
Yeah, actually, I surprisingly so, which is all the more reasons for me to actually get one.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, maybe I should back this whole praise for these games with some cash.
But go ahead, why Flower?
Flower is in many ways a perfect game. It's weird to say, and I know some people hate this game.
Oh yeah, very divisive.
Exactly. But by perfect, I mean that I don't believe you can add or take away from this game. From the controls, which are simply, you tilt the controller and you push a button to move forward. All right? Any more or less than that, and it's too complex or it's too simple. And then the level progression, there's something like 5 levels. And there's no level that really is like a repeat. Each level has a purpose in moving the storyline forward, you know? And it's not buying time. So many games kind of just add a bit of grind in there or a bit of, whatever. Here's this idea. Let's move on to the next concept, move on to the next. There's a pinnacle, falling action, finish.
Right.
And so every level needs to be in there.
Is it safe to say that this game caught you off guard, essentially?
Definitely did. I expected something that was going to be kind of fun. People have talked about the floatiness and stuff. And if anything, that's what's remaining after the first playthrough. It is in generally just fun to play. It's delightful to kind of just float around, make these flowers bloom, go over here, experience kind of the beauty and the graphics of it all. But there's so much more to it. And I think what took me was the story arc. I started off by just enjoying the first level so much that I could have just had that as a game.
Right.
And then to have that normalcy then encroached upon, which expands the gameplay, was huge. It blew my mind and just opened up my concepts to so many different things that could happen in games.
This sounds so artsy, This is the kind of stuff that people probably get ticked that are on the opposite side. Is oh God, there they go again, the Braid fans or whatever,
Exactly. Well, maybe it's because of that. Maybe it's because I have aspirations to somehow get into game development somehow down the road, that this game was so important to me. Because I really think if you develop games, you need to play Flower, because it wraps everything up in a nutshell of what you should do. I mean, you could make a 40-hour-long game, but you want to make sure it does everything Flower does.
And by contrast to the Beatles, is this one that you are replaying?
Well, no, because my roommate kind of took his PS3 into his room, so
his bedroom.
Exactly. I haven't worked up the strength to just go in there while he's away, just in his dark bedroom playing.
Sit on his bed, in his boudoir,
enjoying the beauty of Flower.
They does seem a little bit over the line, perhaps, as roommates go.
But this just makes me really think about man, what could I do? How could you have a game where just the normal stuff before evil happens is fun, so that you're mad when evil happens and you fight it, and then whenever you get rid of it, my goodness, you're so happy to finally be back. That is sweet, and I just think so many games kind of stop too soon. So many games end badly. They get so much momentum and then just
Not so with Flower.
Wow,
and this is a 6 or 5 level game.
There's no reason for a Flower 2.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. It's a complete package.
Right.
It's a complete story.
Sure.
You're bam, Flower. That's it.
That's it. Drop the mic and walk away.
Exactly.
Wow. Flower. Well, I think I'm going to, it's funny, you called me ahead of time.
Yeah.
Before we recorded this, and you said, should we pick a game that we agree upon for the year? And I was like, no, because normally I don't think we do tend to agree on the exact title. And this year we definitely don't. However, we do have one thing in common, and that is downloadable games.
Yeah.
Because my pick for 2009 Game of the Year is Shadow Complex.
Nice.
A downloadable 360 game that fully caught me off guard. I think this is, sort of the theme running through here is things that we didn't expect to like. Although Uncharted 2 was, shouted from the rooftops. But this game, and I said it in our review, and if you've listened, this game to me was better than so many $60 games, and it's $15.
Yeah.
How can you not recommend it?
It is the year of the downloadable game. I really think, when you see...
Or something.
These games are getting into people's homes and getting into their top lists,
Right. It's something where you can afford to fail more easily, I think, is when you make a smaller commitment.
Right.
You can go a little crazier, which is what happened with Flower and what happened with some of these others, and really, to me, seems like the answer to the people who cry out against cookie-cutter games is go try some of these indie games and go try some of these downloadable ones, because these little studios, they have nothing to lose almost,
Yeah.
They're going to sell this little game for cheap, and if it succeeds, fine. If it fails, fine. Chair, the company that made it, had prior to this, I think I had only seen Undertow, which I really wasn't very excited about. But somehow, and it was published by this game was published by Epic, and it feels more like an Epic game. No pun intended. But it's got so many of those things that just the whole time made me go, oh, they thought of that. Oh, they thought of this.
Right.
And they make you feel cool for however many hours it lasted, and I did just continue playing, feeling cool. And the scene where you actually get the running fast boots, I don't know what to call them, but yeah, the super fast boots. I went flying through a power up, and in that game, when you grab a power up, you go into slow motion. I slowed down at the moment that I was booking across this room, tearing walls down, and then I ran up a wall, turned in midair while going in slow-mo. This is sort of an accident because of the power-up, and fired at a guy with my gun. And I have not felt cooler all year in a video game than that. And so that is Shadow Complex. It's such an easy recommend. It's only $15. And this is one that you've played, so I should probably let you.
Well, yeah, I gotta say, this was another game that I was considering for Game of the Year. And man, it really was just so fun to sit down and play. I gotta say, I don't know that I'll go back and play it again.
Right.
But
there is a lot there if you do want to play it again.
Yeah, I wrung that rag out, though. I was like, let's get every freaking achievement I can and really try and find every item. I got to a point where I could go fight the last boss, but I didn't want to because there's I have more items I got to get,
Yeah.
Which is great.
I think you got the 100% achievement, right?
I think so, yeah. Pretty sure I did. I think I was jumping up into a corner just to see that area and have it on the map, so it gives me 100%.
Yeah, exactly. I read one walkthrough that talks about a room, and I won't spoil anything, but there's a particular room that starts to explode, and you have to get out of it. And the walkthrough said, before you leave the exploding room, make sure to run all the way to the left so that you get that area on the map.
Yeah.
It's normally I don't want to do that, but there are completionists, and I don't know if you're one of them, but who just, it's I gotta achieve that, and there's so much there to achieve.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'm naturally a completionist, because I'll usually get those achievements without noticing that I'm doing it. Right. I just want to explore every nook and cranny, and that game really kind of feeds into that desire. And man, I loved how you can go off the beaten path in that game,
right?
And it's still so interesting to explore. You'll just get into a whole other place, and you'll be like, man. I think that as a kid, that's what I always wanted.
Right.
You'd be out visiting grandma's house, and you'd be like, oh, this is boring. But then you see some small wooden door in the corner, and you just wanted to open that and have it be Willy Wonka's candy room.
Right. Yeah.
Hidden. But rewarding, and that obviously doesn't happen in real life, but it does happen in this game.
Yeah. Also, Nolan North voices the main character, so you have that going for it.
Right.
And yeah, some of those areas you talk about that are hidden, the upper foresty type areas, I was just how far are they going to let you go? Because a lot of that stuff really feels even though it's on the map, I guess they expect somebody will go up there. It doesn't feel like anybody else is going to ever go up there, but I am.
Mm-hmm.
You get that feeling of I'm just exploring this crazy area because I can. By the end, when you're sort of rocket packing as much as you want, you're swimming as much as you want, and I said this in the review, but it does that amazing thing of stopping you from going to a place and then later letting you proceed. A feeling that certainly, especially on this show, is very at home because it's nostalgia. It takes you back to the old Castlevania and the old Metroid and all that stuff.
Yeah, Castroid.
And again, I thought Ninja Gaiden at times, but I've apparently been shot down.
Ninja Gaiden. If you climb up a ladder and then try and climb back down the ladder, you die.
Yeah,
that's a secret for defeating ninjas that people need to have in their arsenal.
A good pro tip from Rob, and
they can only climb up ladders.
Yes, thank you. A good pro tip. But I will quickly say that, again, this is influenced by the fact that I only have an Xbox 360. I think if you have other systems, there's probably games better than Shadow Complex.
Yeah.
From what I'm gathering, I'm not sure. Maybe it still would have been my best, but certainly as a 360 owner, that was the thing I absolutely had to recommend.
And for $15, people.
Yeah, come on. Get off your butts and get it. I don't know who we're talking to at this point. So let's move on. We actually were deciding to do something new because it is the end of a decade.
Yeah.
By some calendars. I don't know where I stand on the whole, is it really the decade ending? Is it not? But apparently everyone else thinks it is. Yeah.
Okay, let me explain this. When did we have the party?
Is that how it goes?
Pretty much. When did people have the party for the new millennium, for the year 2000?
And believe me, I partied as hard as everyone else when that happened, and also feared Y2K when that happened.
So it wasn't the new millennium 2001 by most people.
Right.
People didn't care.
Right.
2001, there's the few guys who are like, the new millennium.
I know, like three Linux geeks, or something.
We rolled over the decimal is what we care about.
Oh, right. But then if we do that counting, are we then hypocrites to consider 0 to 9 the decade? I don't know.
Our culture embraces the relevance of 0.
Right on. So with that embracing, Rob and I are going to talk about our top game of the decade. I know that I have my personal favorite, but I also think I have one that I would say is overall the most important of the decade. But I'll let you decide however you want to do this. Gaming-wise, what is the big one for you?
Yeah, it's a tough question, but I actually tweeted that I don't think this is as hard to figure out as the game of the year. Because we know what this decade was all about, like what games were big.
Yeah.
So, my game of the decade... Just if somebody says, what's the game of the decade? This is my kind of gut reaction, and I feel it's true, was World of Warcraft.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, it certainly lasted most of the decade.
Exactly.
And it's still going.
That's what I think is so crazy about that game is it came out when? Like 2005?
It's like 5 years or more at this point, and we sound so sad compared to the hardcore faithful out there.
I know.
But yeah, most of the time when you pick a decade game, you're picking a game that came and went, but you thought it was influential. This game is still going.
It's still going. So how can it not be the game of the decade? It literally has lasted half the decade.
Yeah.
And is constantly updating. It shows like Blizzard is freaking amazing. They knew how to do it right. People were like, well, there's no way you're going to dethrone EverQuest. People, including me.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I played both betas. I played EverQuest 2 and World of Warcraft. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to side with EverQuest 2. I got EverQuest 2. I got the subscription to it. And then I was like, man, World of Warcraft is so much better. I think it literally, on some people's lists, won Game of the Year twice in a row. Because
how is that possible?
Because it was basically new content, was still being created for that game. And people played it so much the year after it was released and won Game of the Year that people were like, let's give it Game of the Year again. Because it's still amazingly fun to play. But beyond that...
Even though we don't play it, but yes.
I think like so many people salivate over that, like in the industry, just to achieve that kind of thing. There's like 6 million people playing that game, and like 1 million is great if you can get that. Right. But they really focused on making it fun.
Yeah, it's accessible. It's the only MMO that I've ever played and enjoyed. I tried Star Wars Galaxies. There's so many dark moments surrounding the moment that you talked about where you were beta testing EverQuest and World of Warcraft, and we were both playing Star Wars Galaxies. Like, it's such a dark time because I remember we went into Best Buy and they actually didn't have Star Wars Galaxies on the shelf yet. We had to get the guy to get it from the back. Which is funny because Penny Arcade did all that stuff about the fabled back, quote unquote.
Right.
They're like, that doesn't exist. There's no back, that there's nothing normally in the back that's not on the shelf. But that time it was, and we were so hyped up for Star Wars Galaxies, and good Lord, did it let us down. Just sitting in a field, crouching, hammering away at dirt with a pickaxe while you were doing some sort of weird musical flourishes in some cantina with like prostitutes or whatever. It was just a terrible life. We wanted to be the Luke Skywalkers, and we ended up being like the janitors of the galaxy or whatever. It's like, we're not doing anything fun except sitting in Mos Espa taking screen grabs.
And begging for people to look at me because otherwise I wouldn't earn any experience. They could sit there and listen to my music, but I wouldn't earn anything. I was like,
a Wookiee actually came and helped me, and I was like, thank you. Like, it was just so depressing in existence. But anyway, cut to World of Warcraft, and like even Amber played that. Like, it was just like, and she doesn't play video games, period, but let alone one that's as seemingly complex as an MMO. But she got into it. She was tailoring clothing. She was making her little character, naming it, giving it. It hits on all of those things that I think people like. So
yeah, really does. And like, if you're gonna have a job in a game, it has to be fun because I already have a job in real life.
Yeah, and this game is not made for someone with a job or a wife or any kind of. If you're not 16, it's very like rough, this game, because you have perpetual world with perpetual people who are not going to give up just because you have to go to the bathroom or like say goodbye to your girlfriend or whatever else you have to do.
Yeah, there's no pause button on World of Warcraft.
No, there's totally not.
Which leads to the addiction. Yeah. And on top of that, people make friends on there. And whenever like those friends are online and they're like, come on, it's raid night. We got to do this. Don't go to. It's raid night.
You can't disappoint
we need
raid
you
night.
to tank.
Yeah. It's just like having a bowling team or something where you have to meet on a regular time, and like your spouse may not understand that. Like, and she may not have agreed to that. Like when she signed up for this, like that you would suddenly be like literally gone. I mean, you might as well call it like it's a real world commitment. It is not just a game, and I think that's the benefit, but also like the curse.
It is
now I just want to play a game that I can play in isolation for 1 hour and turn off when I'm bored. You cannot just turn off your raid when you're bored.
Yeah, and I think that's when I stopped playing World of Warcraft. Is whenever I started to depend on other people to be at a certain point at a certain time.
Right.
And I didn't want that. I loved just the size of the world. The fact that it was consistently flowing, like there wasn't any load screen between points, which was the way the older ones functioned.
Yeah.
It was what you wanted. It was a huge thing. The first Griffin ride you take, you're just like, my goodness, this is huge.
It was great. And it was also a time when neither one of us had big commitments.
Right.
And I don't think I can return to that again.
No.
And I feel like we should stress that, because if people ever wonder why we don't dabble in this truly monumental geek thing, like, a lot of geeks are playing this game. We're not.
Yeah.
I simply can't commit to it anymore.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Left 4 Dead 2. Like, I don't have 4 friends who all own that, who can all commit to the same time period on the same console or whatever. It's like, God, there's just such a steep barrier of entry.
Yeah, and an interesting thing, out of all of our games of the year, only Uncharted 2 has multiplayer. And I didn't play that.
It's fitting.
We like single player games that you can jump in, jump out. You don't really have to commit to anything.
Yeah. At some point I need to listen to Gamers with Jobs, which is another podcast I've seen, and I just love that title.
Yeah.
Because I do think that changes things, and people may want to act like it's not, but when you see a game of the year like Left 4 Dead 2 or whatever, and somebody says game of the year, and then you go, okay, but wait, but you're in the industry playing games for a living, knowing all these other people who also play games for a living, like you were able to make this magic scenario happen. I'm not, unfortunately. And I hope that doesn't offend anybody, but
yeah, I mean, but I'm still kind of, I have to admit, kind of excited about the Old Republic.
Oh yeah,
just by virtue of the team that's putting it together, the videos I've seen. It looks like an MMO that plays like a current RPG game. It plays like Mass Effect.
Yeah,
I'm excited about that.
Exactly. Maybe it will just coexist happily with World of Warcraft. Maybe it'll be played by the same people and or by different people, sci-fi people, Star Wars people.
World of Warcraft is like Google. better isn't good enough. Bing is better than Google, but that's not good enough to get people off of Google.
Right. Yeah, it's tough. So let's not try to get people off of that.
Anyways.
So that is your game of the decade, and I'm going to give real quick two. First is the one that I think had the biggest influence, and that is Grand Theft Auto 3.
Oh, really?
Which
wow.
is a game that really sort of created the open world thing realistically for people. It did it very well for the first try at that, and it has been the map for basically every other open world game that's come since. You have to compare yourself to Grand Theft Auto and somehow improve on it or twist it or whatever. But man, they had a lot of things right. And to briefly get nostalgic, it reminds me of when we had TurboGrafx 16 and we were playing that racing role-playing game.
Yeah, it was the weirdest thing.
Yeah, and gosh, Jason knows what the title is, and I totally forget because he has all of our Hue cards. But yeah, it was a role-playing game / racing game, and it got us talking. Even as little kids, we were saying, man, what if there was just a game where you could walk around, and if you went to a stadium, you played football, and if you went into a racetrack, you raced, and if you went into a fighting arena, you did a fighting game. It would be the ultimate game.
Yep.
Well, that game still doesn't exist. But Grand Theft Auto created sort of the racing / shooting / walking around and having the RPG elements. It really is an attempt to get toward that ultimate game that we were imagining as kids. And I love Saints Row 2. In fact, I'm going to say that at this point it's definitive for me that Saints Row 2 is better than Grand Theft Auto 4 in so many ways. And I know that that's sacrilegious too, but
it is. Boo.
And I accept those boos, but that sounded weird.
You accept the booze.
And you can accept booze in Saints Row 2 if you want, along with a lot of other things. But anyway, it's just so fun to be able to switch back and forth between those different gameplay styles. So I think Grand Theft Auto 3 is probably the decade's most influential game for my money.
Okay.
But my heart lies with Half-Life 2.
Oh.
Half-Life 2 came out in 2004. I almost sounded like I was getting choked up. But I mean, God, what a great genre-bending kind of situation also. Because, you have such story in a freaking first-person shooter. And it created the whole, Steam system, which launched when Half-Life 2 launched and is now the most powerful, download service basically in existence. And it's doing it so well. Mm-hmm. And, your comments on the antlion animation aside, that game holds up for me.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's why I bought the orange box, and I'm glad I did because I discovered Portal. But I bought the orange box because, dang, I'm going to be able to play Half-Life 2 again on my big screen, and I have. And it's still so cinematic and does it in a way that doesn't make you think that they're leading you along, although they totally are. And you can watch the developer commentary to see how they do that. There's nobody better than Valve still for me.
Right.
And that's the game that I would say is their greatest success. And I think Episode 2 was really, really good. Can't wait to see Episode 3. And I agree with you. Like, it's maddening that there hasn't been news about it.
Yeah. I gotta say, though, if you're doing two games, if I could just throw one more out there, which
Absolutely.
is I believe that Rock Band 2 is also a great game of the decade.
Well, there were some people who put Guitar Hero in their list of games of the decade for the influence.
Right, but Rock Band 2 is the pinnacle. For example, you'd say, Grand Theft Auto 3, I would say Vice City.
Okay.
Because it's not, the one that made it happen, but it's the one that got it right.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is also about Rock Band 2 is its longevity. The fact that I still play it.
Right.
That I think a year from now, I'll probably still be booting that up. Unless, everything transfers over to Rock Band 3. But it's also revolutionary because it's one of the first games that's also a platform, for continual expansion. I think that's brilliant as a model.
Yeah, is it safe to say that Rock Band 2 is like a console almost? Like, it is a Wii.
Yeah.
Because you bust it out, and it's a party in a box. And it's that one thing that you keep coming back to when friends come over.
I actually believe that Activision has hinted at making a Guitar Hero standalone console of some kind.
It would be a great idea. Because that's the only barrier. No, but listen, I mean, when people want to play Beatles Rock Band, that's a huge cost to go buy a 360, or buy a PS3, whatever. But to say, like, here's this, if the game was somehow built in.
Well, I mean, they're already spending $250 for the full Beatles Rock Band, so, I mean, that's the cost of a Wii.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird concept. I think I'd rather just leave the raw processing power and like have good graphics on top of everything, rather than like some sort of lamer plugged into TV thing. So
Rock Band 2.
Rock Band 2, also a game of the decade.
Sure. Well, and that's I know that's where your heart lies.
If you don't have it, get it.
Yeah, exactly. So that is going to have to wrap it up for this week. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to follow us throughout the week to get your geek fix, you can. Was that nerdy? I think it was. On Twitter, our Twitters are /GUGBrad and /GUGRob. You can always email us at mail@growing-up-geek.com. Real quick shout out to Jack, who emailed us this week to say that he, on our advice, went and bought Flight, a comic book that we talked about on the show many moons ago, and that he really enjoyed it. And that was really exciting. I always love to share those things with people.
Sweet.
And that is going to do it for this week. Once again, my name is Brad.
I'm going to go stare into infinity again.
And we'll see you next week.